No one remembers exactly who started singing. That's how most of the men there describe it now. Not as an event, not as a plan, just a moment that drifted into existence when everything else had become too loud, too heavy, too dangerous. It was winter in Russia. The kind of winter that strips color from the world and leaves only gray, white, and the sound of boots crunching over frozen ground. The soldiers had been stationed there for weeks, rotating through long nights of watch duty, nerves stretched thin by exhaustion and uncertainty. These were trained men, disciplined, alert, conditioned to respond instantly to threat. Rifles were always within reach. Fingers rested close to triggers, even during moments of quiet, especially during moments of quiet. Among them was a Filipino contract worker attached to a logistics unit. Not a frontline soldier, not someone meant to carry authority. He was there to keep systems running, supplies moving, equipment repaired. Invisible work, the kind no one notices unless it fails. He was small compared to most of the men around him, soft-spoken, kept to himself. The others knew little about him beyond his name and the fact that he rarely complained, even when conditions were brutal. That night, the temperature dropped sharply. Wind howled through the skeletal trees surrounding the camp. Visibility was poor, tension high. Rumors had spread earlier of movement nearby. Nothing confirmed, but enough to keep everyone on edge. Guns were raised more often than usual. Voices stayed low. Sleep didn't come. The Filipino man sat near a heating barrel, hands close to the fire, eyes unfocused. He thought about home, about heat that didn't come from metal drums, about nights when fear wasn't something you trained yourself to ignore. Without thinking, he began to hum. At first, it was barely audible, just a vibration in his chest. Something familiar, something old, a lullaby. The kind his mother used to sing when the power went out back home, when storms rattled windows, when darkness felt too big for a child to face alone. Sa ugoy ng duyan. The words were soft, almost swallowed by the wind. No one reacted at first. A few soldiers glanced over, annoyed. Music wasn't part of protocol. Noise wasn't welcome. But he didn't sing to be heard. He sang to remember. The melody moved slowly, gently rocking, like breath, like waves, like time slowing down just enough to feel safe. Something strange happened. The men nearest him felt it before they understood it. Shoulders relaxed, breathing slowed. One soldier lowered his rifle slightly, not realizing he had done it. Another leaned back against a crate, eyes closing for just a second. No one spoke. The lullaby continued, steady and unbroken. A Russian soldier across the fire stared at the singer, confused. He didn't understand the language, but his jaw tightened and his eyes burned unexpectedly. The song reminded him of something he hadn't thought about in years. His grandmother. A kitchen. A voice humming while hands worked quietly. Someone else exhaled sharply, like they were holding back tears. And then, almost without coordination, rifles were lowered. Not dropped in panic, not thrown away, just set down. Carefully, as if the moment demanded respect. For several minutes, no one moved. The fire crackled. Snow drifted sideways through the trees. The lullaby filled the space where fear had been sitting all night. When the song ended, the silence that followed wasn't tense. It was human. No one clapped. No one spoke. The Filipino man looked embarrassed, like he'd broken an unspoken rule. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean—" "No," one of the soldiers interrupted. His voice was thick. "Don't stop." They asked him what the song meant. He explained simply that it was sung to children, to help them sleep, to tell them they were safe, even when things were hard. A Russian officer nodded slowly. "That's what it felt like," he said. Word spread through the camp over the next few days. Not officially, quietly, men told others what they had felt that night. How the tension broke, how no alarms were triggered, how nothing bad happened, not because of weapons, but because something gentler took over. The lullaby was requested again. Different nights, different groups, always the same effect. No orders changed, no mission was altered, but something inside the men shifted. They spoke more softly, listened more, carried their fear differently. Later, When footage of the moment surfaced online, shaky, grainy, barely audible, people argued about it. Some called it impossible, others called it propaganda. But the men who were there didn't argue. They remembered how it felt to stop seeing each other as threats. They remembered how for a few minutes they were just people standing in the cold, reminded of warmth. The Filipino man returned home months later, back to ordinary life, back to anonymity. But he carried something with him. The knowledge that a song meant for children had done what weapons could not. It didn't end conflict. It didn't rewrite history. But it reminded hardened men of something older than war. That before uniforms, before orders, before borders, they were all once children, listening for a voice in the dark, hoping someone would sing them into peace.